David Goggins is back in the military at 51 years old, and a lot of people are asking the same question. How is that even possible if he already retired? Most people think once you do 20 years in the military and retire, that's it. You get your retirement pay, you go home, and the military can't touch you anymore. But that's not exactly how military retirement works. Military retirement is different from leaving a regular civilian job. When you retire from the military, especially after 20 years of active duty service, you may no longer report to work every day, but you are still connected to the military system in certain ways. Under certain rules and legal authorities, retired military members can return to active duty. Sometimes that happens voluntarily, sometimes it can happen through recall authority when the military has a need. So in this video, I'm going to break down how David Goggins is going back into the military, what retiree recall means, what the voluntary return program is, and why his Navy SEAL background may help him with pararescue training, but does not mean he gets to skip the school. David Goggins already served a full military career. He served in the Air Force earlier in his career, then later became a Navy SEAL. He retired after more than 20 years of active duty service. That means he earned his retirement, his retired rank, and his retirement pay. But here's the part people miss. Military. Retirement does not always mean the military relationship is completely over. When someone retires from active duty, they are no longer serving every day like a regular active duty service member. But retired members can still fall under certain military recall rules. The government has legal authority to bring certain retired military members back onto active duty when there is a valid military need. This authority comes from Title 10 U.S. Code Section 688. That law allows certain retired members to be ordered back onto active duty under rules set by the Department of Defense and the service branch. Now, that does not mean every retiree is just sitting at home waiting for the military to call them back. That is not usually how it works. There are different categories of retirees. There are different rules, limits, and reasons someone may be brought back. Some returns are voluntary, meaning the retiree agrees to come back. Others may involve recall authority, especially during war, national emergency, or when the military needs certain skills. People who served during OIF and OEF may remember seeing retired military members brought back onto active duty. That actually happened. It was not just some theory. During those years, the military needed people, especially experienced people, and some retirees were recalled or brought back to help fill gaps. So when people see David Goggins back in uniform, they should understand that it is unusual, but it is not impossible. The military has always had ways to reach back into the retired population when it needs manpower, experience, or specific skill sets. Now, the specific program people are talking about with David Goggins is called VRAD. That stands for Voluntary Retired Return to Active Duty. In basic terms, VRAD is a program that allows retired military members to voluntarily return to active duty. The Air Force restarted this program in 2024 because it had manning shortages and needed experienced people in certain areas. The Air Force was looking at retirees as a talent pool. Instead of only trying to recruit brand new people, they could bring back some people who already served, already understood the military, and already had experience. That is the important difference. This is not the draft. This is not the military randomly forcing every retiree back into uniform. This is the military saying, we have trained people sitting in retirement, and some of them may still be willing and able to serve. If they meet the requirements, we may be able to use them. That is why this program matters. The military has been dealing with recruiting and retention challenges. Every branch is trying to bring in new people, keep experienced people, and fill hard-to-fill jobs. So bringing back retired people with valuable experience can make sense in certain situations. Think about it like this. If the military has a shortage in a high-demand field, it may take years to train someone new from scratch. But if there is a retired person who already understands military culture, already knows how the system works, already has leadership experience, and already has a needed skill, that person can still be useful to the mission. That is the reason programs like VRAD exist. Now here is where David Goggins' story gets interesting. Reports say David Goggins returned to the Air Force at age 51 and is serving serving as a master sergeant. He is reportedly connected with the Air Force Special Warfare Training Wing and Pararescue training at Joint Base San Antonio Lackland. That is not normal. Most people are not going back into a special warfare pipeline at 51 years old. Most people are not trying to go through that kind of training after already retiring. And most people with his level of fame, money, and public platform would probably just stay retired. But Goggins has built his whole image around doing hard things. So from that standpoint, this fits who he is. But let's be clear about something. His Navy SEAL background matters, but it does not give him a free pass. Being a former Navy SEAL is a big deal. There is no reason to downplay that. It means he already completed one of the hardest military training pipelines in the world. It means he understands pain, discipline, selection, military structure, teamwork, and high standards. That experience probably helps him mentally and physically. But pararescue is not Navy SEAL training. Pararescue is its own Air Force Special Warfare career field. It has its own mission, its own pipeline, its own culture, and its own standards. A PJ is not just a shooter. Pararescuemen are trained to rescue and recover personnel in hostile or dangerous environments. They are also trained in advanced medical care. That means the pipeline includes physical training, tactical training, medical training, rescue training, airborne training, water confidence, survival training, and other demanding requirements. So even if someone was a Navy SEAL, Ranger, Green Beret, Marine Raider, or any other special operator, that does not automatically make them a PJ. They still have to meet the Air Force standard. That is the part people need to understand. Prior service can help you get looked at. Prior experience can help you perform. Prior qualifications may help in certain areas, but they do not automatically waive the entire pipeline. Goggins, being a former Navy SEAL, may help him with the mental side. It may help him with the physical grind. It may help him understand how special operations training works. But if the Air Force requires him to go through pararescue training, then he has to go through pararescue training. That is also why this story is bigger than just David Goggins. This story teaches people something about how military retirement really works. A lot of civilians and even some military members think retirement means total separation, but military retirement is different. You earned retired pay, but you can still be connected to military authority in certain ways. That is especially true when it comes to recall rules. Now let's talk about the money side. When a retired member comes back onto active duty, they normally do not just collect full retired pay and full active duty pay at the same time. In most cases, retired pay stops before the member resumes active duty. Then, while they are back on active duty, they receive active duty pay. When they return to retirement, their retired pay may be recalculated based on the additional active duty time they served. So in plain English, if a retiree goes back on active duty, their retirement check usually stops while they are back on active duty. They get active duty pay instead. Then, when they retire again, their retirement may be recomputed based on the extra time they served. That does not mean everyone gets some huge retirement increase. It depends on the person's situation, time served, pay grade, and how long they came back on active duty. The key point is this. It is not just double dipping the way some people might assume. Now, another thing people should understand is that voluntary return programs have limits. These programs usually have grade restrictions, career field restrictions, tour limits, medical requirements, and application windows. It is not just, I'm retired, I want to come back, so let me in. The service still has to need you. You still have to qualify, and you still have to be accepted. That matters because if people hear this story and think any retired military member can just go back whenever they feel like it, that is not accurate. The better way to say it is this. The military can bring retired members back under certain programs and legal authorities, but the member still has to meet the rules, the service has to have a need, and the return has to be approved. Now let's separate two things that people often mix together. There is voluntary return and there is retiree recall. They are related, but they are not exactly the same. Voluntary return means the retired member agrees to come back. That is the cleanest way to explain VRRAD. The service has a need, the retiree applies or agrees, and if selected, they return to active duty. Retiree recall is broader. That is when the military has legal authority to bring certain retirees back under Title 10. Depending on the situation, it may be voluntary or involuntary, and the rules can depend on the type of retiree, the military need, and the authority being used. So when talking about Goggins, I would not present it like he was forced back in. Based on what has been reported, this appears to be a voluntary return to active duty. That is a big difference. He appears to have chosen this, and honestly, that is what makes the story stand out. He already did over 20 years. He already became a Navy SEAL. He already built a public name. He already became an author, speaker, endurance athlete, and public figure. He does not need to do this to prove anything to most people, but he still went back. And at 51 years old, that is not a small thing. Most people at 51 are thinking about protecting their knees, not going through a special warfare pipeline. Most people who already retired from the military are not trying to go back into a training environment with people half their age. But Goggins has always been about testing himself. That is why people follow him. Whether people like him or not, he has a pattern of putting himself into difficult situations on purpose. Now, for the military audience, here is the professional point. This shows how valuable experience still is. The military can spend years developing people. It spends money training them, preparing them, and giving them operational experience. When those people retire, all that experience does not just disappear. It goes into the civilian world, private sector, contracting, business, law enforcement, consulting, or retirement. Programs like BRAD are a way for the military to reach back into that experience pool. And that matters because the military has been dealing with manning issues, recruiting challenges, and retention problems. Sometimes, instead of only trying to recruit brand new people, the service may look at people who already served, already understand the lifestyle, and may still be physically, mentally, and professionally capable of contributing. That does not mean every retiree should come back. A lot of retirees are done. They did their time, they served honorably, they earned retirement, they moved on, and there is nothing wrong with that. But for those who still want to serve and who meet the requirements, there may be pathways. Goggins is just a high-profile example of something that already exists. Now, let's talk about the pararescue piece again, because that is the part that will probably get the most comments. Some people will say, he was a SEAL, so pararescue should be easy. That is not a smart way to look at it. Different special operations jobs are hard in different ways. Navy SEAL training is brutal. Nobody serious denies that. But pararescue training is also brutal, and it has a different mission focus. PJs are expected to perform rescue and medical care under extreme conditions. They may have to jump, dive, climb, swim, treat casualties, recover personnel, and operate in situations where failure can mean someone dies. So it is not just about being tough. It is about being trained for a specific mission. That is why prior SEAL experience does not automatically equal PJ qualification. It helps, but it does not replace the training. Here is the cleanest way to say it. His background gives him an advantage, but it does not waive the standard. That line is important because it respects what he already did, but it also respects the Air Force Pararescue community. Because if you make it sound like he just walks in and gets handed a beret, people from that community are going to correct you fast. Now, another thing to mention is age. Goggins is 51. That is obviously older than the normal age for someone entering these types of pipelines. Reporting says he received an age waiver because of his background and experience. That means the Air Force made an exception. But an age waiver does not mean a performance waiver. Let me say that again. An age waiver gets you in the door. It does not carry you through the pipeline. Once you are in training, you still have to perform. That is true whether you are 21, 31, 41, or 51. You still have to meet the standard. So the real point of this video is not just David Goggins is back. The real point is this. Military retirement does not always mean the military relationship is completely over. Retired members can sometimes return to active duty. The military can recall certain retirees under legal authority. The Air Force had a voluntary program to bring back retired talent. And even someone like David Goggins still has to meet the requirements of the job he is trying to do. This is where I think a lot of people get military service wrong. They think everything is simple. They think retired means completely done. They think prior special operations means you can skip any other school. They think age waivers mean standards are lowered. But the military is more complicated than that. There are rules, programs, exceptions, waivers, manpower needs, and legal authorities that most people never hear about unless a high-profile person brings attention to it. David Goggins brought attention to it. So instead of just making this a motivational story, it is also a chance to educate people on how the system works. And to me, that is what makes this worth talking about. Because whether you like David Goggins or not, what he is doing is rare. He already served. He already retired. He already proved himself in one of the hardest military communities. And now he is going back into another hard military pipeline at 51 years old. That is not normal, but it is possible. And the reason it is possible is because military retirees can return to active duty under certain programs and legal authorities. That does not mean everybody can do it. That does not mean everybody will be accepted. That does not mean it is easy. And it does not mean prior service waives every requirement, but it does mean retirement is not always the final chapter. For some people, especially people with needed skills, the military may still have a place for them. So the bottom line is this: David Goggins going back into the military after retirement is unusual, but it is not impossible. The military has legal authority to bring retired members back under certain conditions. The Air Force also had the VRRAD program, which allowed retired members to voluntarily return to active duty to help fill critical shortages. But the most important thing is this: Goggins may be a former Navy SEAL, but that does not automatically make him a pararescueman. His experience helps him. His mindset helps him. His background helps him. But if he is going through pararescue training, he still has to earn it. And that is what makes the story powerful. Not just that he came back, not just that he was already famous, not just that he was already a SEAL, but that after retirement, after more than 20 years of service, and after already building a name for himself, he still chose to go back into the military and put himself under a standard again. That is the part people should pay attention to. Until the next time, like, subscribe, and stay dangerous.